Hey, my name is ShawNshawN. I sell art on ShawNshawN.co and specials on eBay. Today we're going to review the Goldfinch. So this film was directed by John Crowley. It's fairly long, 2 hours, 29 minutes. It has actors. It has 3 generations of actors, so I'm only going to cover a few of them. Oaks Fegley as the young Theo Decker. Ansel Elgort is the adult Theo Decker. Nicole Kidman is Miss Barber, one of the caretakers for Theo. Jeffrey Knight is Hobie, another caretaker who's in the furniture business. Finn Wolfgard is the young Boris, and more or less the teenage Boris. Aaron Bernard is the adult Boris. So the story of young boy is traumatized by a bombing at the Met while he's viewing this collection with his mother. His mother goes off into the room and she wants to do this painting for the last time, and then the kid is by the gift store. He's kind of bored. Then the bomb goes off, and then he runs after his mother after he wakes up. In the same room as his mother is this guy, and he's dying, and he gives him the ring, and he says, go to this, grab that painting and take it to this guy. And the boy kind of confuses, so he takes the painting. He doesn't know what to do with it, and he has this ring. And so after a while, he kind of realizes he should go to this guy, Hobie. But he's so in the confusion of what happened in his mind in the bombing that he doesn't realize he's supposed to bring the painting to this guy, right? Because the other guy is an antique stealer. And so he just holds on to the painting. He doesn't know why he's supposed to have the painting. And also because his mother was the last painting she saw, he kept it because that's kind of the last thing connecting him to his mother. Besides earrings, he also takes her earrings. So he lives with Miss Barber. He's assigned to Miss Barber. Hobie takes him, is like, oh, I'm not really your caretaker. We found this Miss Barber, who's a friend of the family. He goes live with her. At first, it doesn't seem like he's going to fit into the family. And then it seems like, oh, they're going to invite him to this huge summer vacation in Maine. He's all excited. Oh, he's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And then right when they're about to go, his father shows up, and his father was kind of this ex-alcoholic, left his mother and son for years, and no one knows what went on. And so his father says, hey, I'm showing up. I'm going to take care of the kid. And, Miss Barber can't do anything because she's not the caretaker. And the father's the father, right? So he's stuck to go with the father. They fly to Arizona from New York, away from this whole scene. And he has to tell his friend, this girl that he met in the museum, is like, hey, I'll write you. And so they start becoming pen pals over time. And so he's in Arizona. He really hates it. He doesn't connect with the culture. It's totally different than New York City. It's like a desert, obviously. His father's living in these abandoned homes. And so I guess it's set in 2008, maybe around that time frame. And so his father's living next to these home developments. They're foreclosing on all the properties close by, but somehow the father can afford it. And his father used to be an actor, but he's kind of washed up. He was an alcoholic for a while. Now he's kind of somewhat cleaned up, but he's still drinking beer. So, it makes you wonder. This kid runs into this other kid called Boris, who's this Russian immigrant, lived all over Europe, kind of a similar traumatic connection with the parents. So they, kind of bond, form a close friendship, and then they start kind of experimenting with drugs. At one point they come home and they're tripping and they find out her father's dead, and he's like, dude, what the hell is this? And they're just like totally tripping balls. They don't know what's going on, right? So at this point he's like, oh my god, they're gonna assign me to a home and send me away, right? And he's like, I gotta run away, right? And he tells Boris, I gotta run away. And Boris like, just give me a day. And he's like, no, I have to run away right now. I can't leave. And so he's like, I'll meet you in 2 days, and of course it's not realistic. So the kid runs away. He takes the Greyhound. So I don't know how you can take a Greyhound at this age, but maybe you still can. I know I took it at quite a young age. I don't know if they've changed age policy. Somehow he gets on the bus, right, and takes the Greyhound all the way to New York. So he finds Mr. Hobie again, and Hobie is this dealer, and he's a furniture dealer that he originally met way back in New York. And Hobie said, yeah, I'll take you in. Since the girl he was taking for, she has left, she got retaken by her, I don't know, some aunt or uncle or something. So she's out of the picture, but he still has his spare room, right? So he takes him under his wing. And later, you fast forward to when he's an adult, and then he's formed this really good relationship with the furniture business with Hobie. That Hobie's business was kind of on the rocks, and then he's a great salesman, so he's able to kind of pitch this. But at the same time, he hasn't left behind his drug habits from hanging around with Boris. Later on, he meets up with a friend of the family of Miss Barber, because he forgot where he lived, I think. And so he meets randomly one of the family members, and he's like, oh. And then they go meet the family again, and then he kind of falls in love with one of the girls. Everything looks fine and dandy, and then it turns out she's actually having an affair on him. And at the same time, he's like, heartbroken because of his pen pal in London. She got married off too, so he's kind of screwed in the heart. He's going to marry a girl he doesn't really care for. His fiance doesn't care for him as much, obviously, but she wants to still do it because her mom adores him. So she feels pushed into it. you know, he's doing it because this pen pal won't hook up and is already in London, and she doesn't want to live. The girl in London that was in the bombing doesn't want to live in New York anymore because she's traumatized. So it has all these really twists and turns through the plot, as well as, you know, where they lead you, what is going to happen with the painting. So you think it's with, you know, Theo, and then it turns out at some point, boom, it disappeared, and you're like, oh my god, what happened to the painting, right? So it has this really interesting back and forth between what happened to the painting. You know, it is like 2 hours 29 minutes. I don't know if you need that much time, but there's a lot of different complex stories here, so I don't know how you would shoot it otherwise. One of the interesting part is when you see it initially, you know, since I've, you know, I movie critiqued a lot of movies, I'm like, why is it edited like this? They're giving away kind of the end plot line at the beginning of the movie. You're like, oh, this sucks. And then later it turns out they have a completely different ending. So it's really good they started that way, because they kind of mislead you right off the bat where what's going to happen in the film. So that's kind of fun. But they don't completely mislead you. It's just kind of misdirect slightly. There's also this huge complexity of, you know, 3 different ages, like when he's 12, when he's maybe 13, 14, and then again when he's a young adult. So he has his 3 different lives. He meets several different people over these different life periods. Boris, and then the family of Miss Barbour, as well as his friend the pen pal, and then Hobie. So it has this really complex story and characters, which is really well developed. So I'm not sure you can cut the film down so much, but I was kind of checking my watch like, dude, how much longer is this film? How much longer is this film? It's really bizarre too. In the beginning, you don't understand the guilt he has over the bombing. He's like, it's my fault, it's my fault. And it's like, dude, you're 12. Why would you feel guilty about the bomb? And then of course it turns out he stole this painting, right? And somehow he feels connected for the bombing, even though he just stole a painting. I mean, it's a huge painting that's worth a lot of money, but he doesn't really get it when he's that age, right? And the drug use of the kids, you know, Theo and Boris, makes sense. I mean, I came from a broken family myself. My parents got divorced at a young age, and, you know, later the court decided I had to live with my crazy mother. Similar to this kid, he had to live with his crazy father, right? And so if you live with someone crazy, you tend to be drawn towards other teens. You're more drawn into peer pressure, and you don't respect your elders because you have no respect for them. So I get that kind of, you dive off the deep end of the drugs. And so that makes sense to me quite a bit, especially with Boris as well. He has a really broken family as well. Now, the real question you have to ask yourself, does the film connect with the average Joe that doesn't have really an art collection, how valuable this painting is and how it's connected to you? I mean, I almost feel you either have to be an artist in a way, or the very rich, where you're able to collect a $1 million to, you know, $200,000 piece of work, and you really understand the real historical value of these kind of pieces. Whereas if you're just average Joe with posters, a print or two, do you really understand how valuable this art is? I don't know. So the audience, I think, is a little bit limited. It is an interesting story from the connection of this little kid who steals a painting and then he's in trouble. And so that you make the connection with the audience. And I think they carry that all the way through the film, which is really nice. And it's interesting too with this relationship with this pen pal he meets up, and then later he falls in love with the sister of the family who was mean to him at the time. And so you have all this kind of really interesting character combinations, and why his character develops the way it is, kind of very cautious, even though he's unconscious with drug use, but he's cautious in his regular life as far as occupation. And, you know, I get to understand that. I've myself have been cautious because I came with, you know, this crazy background. So then you're like, well, I don't want to do any risky behavior as far as career moves, but then you might do risky behavior as far as drug use. So I kind of get that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting overall movie. I'm just, you know, the question is, does it connect with the average viewer? Are they going to be like, oh my God, what the hell, where is this movie going? They do have some really great camera work. I think the camera work they really do is they show the mother going completely out of focus when she walks off camera. And that's kind of like how his memory is of her. And, you know, that really makes sense, like why you would use a fuzzy camera movement. So I think that was really cool. And then at the end, they show it clear because he's able to resolve this bitter guilt that he's had his whole life. So I think it's a really fun movie. You know, they have a lot of complex characters here. It might be a little bit too long. Maybe they could have cut 20 minutes out of this. I don't know where. As far as improvement, I mean, you could have shown maybe the history of the painting changing hands over time, and maybe give 5 minutes for that. You don't want to spend too much, it's 2 hours, 29 minutes, but just 5 minutes of where this came. Because they explained it a little bit at the end of the film, but it would have been cooler if they'd done it at the beginning. You'd be like, oh my God, he has this crazy valuable painting, right? Or he discovers when he's older and feels guilty about it. That would have made more sense, I think. Like you read an art history book, and then we're going to cover this famous, painter and da-da-da-da-da. And it's worth $1 million because of this. If they kind of broke it down in those terms, I think it would have made more sense to the guilt he feels, because you're kind of like confused until the end of the film where they kind of resolve why he feels guilty. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting film. It's not for every viewer. If you're not an art fan, I don't know if you're going to connect with this film, but I like it. I'd recommend it. If you want to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.